I'm in my office in Zurich with my wife, Jan Stein, and Rodney Waters, who's going to play a part in this, and Louis Morris, who is the filmmaker. And what we're going to do is a reading of an active imagination that Wolfgang Pauli produced in 1953 and offered to Mary Louise von Franz, his friend and analyst at the time, in recognition of work that they had been doing together on a particular problem, set of problems that Pauli was working on. Wolfgang Pauli is a very famous man of his day. He was a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, professor at the Technical University in Zurich, and a very close friend and colleague of C.G. Jung, who had also been a professor at the Technical University. And their collaboration took place over 20 years, from the mid-1930s until Pauli's death in 1958. In this active imagination that Pauli created and was found in his archives in the 1990s, published in German and then in English translation, he presents a difficulty that he's been working on in himself, subjectively, and in his world for quite a number of years. And the problem is bringing what he calls in the active imagination two schools together. Two schools that in his mind and in his experience are very much in conflict. The one school is the school he's most familiar with, the school of science and mathematics and physics. Pauli was a mathematical genius, a prodigy, who read the papers of Einstein when he was 12 years old and wrote a description of the theory of relativity when he was 18, which Einstein read in astonishment and praised. And in 1945 proposed that Pauli be given the Nobel Prize for Physics, which he was. So Pauli's life in the world of science and mathematics is very deep and very extensive. On the other hand, he also worked very deeply on his dreams, active imagination, which Jung wrote about in the 1930s and 40s, published an interpretation of a series of dreams and active imagination images that Pauli produced, the famous world clock image, for instance. And in this active imagination, Pauli is trying to bring those two schools together in his mind and for the public and for all of us. It's the school of explaining how nature is put together on a mathematical and scientific basis, and trying to understand the meaning of this whole thing, which religion has offered in the past and in our time is no longer sufficient. So Pauli is trying to find a way to speak of meaning from the spiritual side, the psychological side, in concordance with what he knows from mathematics and science. It's a huge project, a very difficult project that he's been working on in many other ways. In this active imagination, he's in dialogue with an inner figure, the piano teacher, who is representation of his anima, his inner feminine, and another figure makes his appearance occasionally called the master, the voice of the master. That's the voice of the self. And in this dialogue with his piano teacher, he discovers that there is a way to bring the two schools together, and he uses the metaphor of the piano, the black and white keys of the piano, the one representing school of science and words, the other the school of the black keys, the school of meaning. And playing the piano is a symbol for living in a united world where you can explain things and you also discover their meaning. So this is what he's attempting to do in this active imagination. When you listen to it as a kind of dramatization, playful expression of theoretical problems that are worked out on a philosophical level at other times. Here he's doing it in a very playful way, and I think in a very moving and emotionally touching way. He presents this to his analyst, Mary Louise von Franz, to whom he was very devoted and dedicated much of his best thinking to, and offered this as a way of experiencing the unity of the world as he had found it in this moment of active imagination. It was a misty day, and I had been seriously troubled for some time. There were two schools. In the one, they understood words, but not meaning. And in the other, they understood meaning, but not my words. I couldn't bring the two schools, science and psyche, together. My last hope was to visit a young woman who lives in Küsnacht. When I arrived at her place and opened the door, I heard from afar a strong masculine voice. I knew it well. It was the voice of the master.
Time reversal.
Immediately, I saw images that looked like cones pointing downwards and their openings facing upward. I recognized this from physics. This gave me confidence, so I went into the house. Suddenly, I was back in Vienna. I was a schoolboy, and I was carrying a briefcase filled with sheets of music. 40 years had simply melted away. It was the year 1913. I entered a room that contained a grand piano and other pieces of furniture, as in the old days. A lady with dark hair was standing by the piano. She looked like a trusted old friend. She was a distinguished lady, and I felt I should address her with great respect. When I approached her, she held out her hand and spoke to me.
You haven't been playing the piano for a long time. Let me give you a lesson.
Yes, please do. Music would be very good for me right now because I'm feeling troubled.
Captain.
Once upon a time, there was a captain.
Here in Vienna, there is a captain, and his daughter is ill. Her soul is sick. Now I see the master approaching the captain's house. He seems to be expecting the captain to speak the words.
The words? Which words?
The words. Lord, I am not worthy to receive you in my house, but speak just one word, and my servant will be healed. There was once another captain in the town of Capernaum, and he spoke those words.
Well, what used to be the obvious thing to do in those times is not the same today. Those were ancient biblical times.
Capernaum or Vienna, it makes no difference. The problem is the same. The point is, the captain in Vienna did not speak the necessary words. It was a simple matter. All he needed to do is say, "my daughter," instead of "my servant." She would have been healed. But the captain in Vienna belongs to a school in which words are understood but not meaning. So he could not find the right words to say when the master wanted to come to him. So the master turned away and left. It was a missed opportunity. I think it must be hard for the master to make himself known to us, and even more difficult to make himself understood by us. We are strangers to him, as he is to us. To us, it looks like he's dreaming, like a sleepwalker who is perfectly sure of himself. I believe he doesn't know much about our waking lives, but he has a vague notion, and he wants to know more. He wants his world and ours to come closer together, and this is what he is constantly trying to arrange. He doesn't mind turning away once in a while, but this time it's serious. This is enough to really harm the captain in Vienna and his daughter.
Yes, but now he's trying something else. He just told me I should help you to play the piano better. This will ease the situation. I also caught his words, beyond the censorship, but I didn't understand what he means.
Oh, I understand that. Do you remember Freud?
Yes, of course. He was my counselor, but he didn't know it.
You see, Freud believed there was a censor that is always present, but only shows itself in dreams. He also thought it was the product of a moralistic Victorian aunt who is otherwise invisible. But actually, such a moralistic aunt doesn't exist. But censorship in dreams does exist. It's created by professors, particularly by those in the sciences. This is because the old captain of Copernic doesn't have power anymore, thank God. However, there is one exception.
What do you mean? Who was the captain of Copernic?
The captain of Copernic was the archetypal charlatan. Nowadays, it is the name for the whole group of charlatans into whose traps so many people have fallen. They are numerous in heaven and on earth. When I was in primary school, I believed that there was only one charlatan, the captain of Copernic, but later I learned that there are many. But this phony captain is possible only because there are true captains and true masters. He is a fake copy. There are false and true captains and masters in the world.
You spoke about an exception. What did you mean? The charlatan captain has lost his power, but is there another?
Yes, exactly. Today, you find a new captain of Copernic in the East, in a sect of virulent ideologues. They are the red slaves. They are dangerous because they have guns and cannons. The black-robed Jesuits have to make do without that kind of power today, and they also have to do without the stake. Let me explain. This is important for understanding dream censorship. It goes like this. The master sends me dreams of scientific meetings in Russia that take place under police surveillance, where the police prevent most participants from talking. Of course, the master wants to tell me about myself, not about the red slaves in Russia. It is a metaphor. In particular, he wants me to understand how the rigidly held but quite limited current views in my mind, the theories, enforce censorship internally. Since the captain in Vienna, who is in charge of the science teachers, did not speak the words, and the master turned away, the master now wants to assert himself again. And he seems to find me particularly suited for the purpose. Through me, he wants to come out into the light of day at all costs. I must say, I often feel weird, and I'm frightened of him. He's not only good, but he can also be dangerous. And he's most dangerous when you ignore him, as the captain in Vienna did. So on the one hand, I'm afraid of the master. On the other hand, he fascinates me. I can't keep away from him, as he can't stay away from me.
My attitude towards him is quite different. We are as one.
For a long time, I believed that was the right way, but I changed my mind. There was a charlatan captain who told people that the black keys on the piano are just holes where white keys are missing, and that all the so-called masters are either completely white or completely black. Many people still follow this line of dogmatic thinking, but not me. I don't agree.
You should tell them that we can also play minor chords on the white keys, such as A, C, E, and major chords on the black keys, such as F sharp, A sharp, C sharp. The truth is more complex than they want to know. Both black and white keys have their reality. All that really matters is that you know how to play the piano.
I played faithfully and willingly, as she had taught me. And when I looked at her, I noticed that she had oriental eyes. She reminded me of the Chinese woman of my dreams. Now that I realize more fully that the art of playing the piano is all that matters, the censorship has eased off considerably. I can relax. The master immediately sent me images showing the Russian armies being pushed back after heavy fighting. Later, I even got images in which the Russians retreated voluntarily. My theories are losing their dogmatic grip. The Iron Curtain in me is no longer so impenetrable. There are small and large gaps in it, peepholes through which I can look. Through one of these, I saw the captain in Capernaum and in Vienna and the master approaching them.
Now I see a vast landscape. It used to be underwater, but now the water has receded, and while the land is still somewhat wet, the ground is firm. It stretches to the far north. Strange people inhabit it. It is becoming more visible.
I see it too, and I see the master there. He is distributing papers among the people. I can't read them, but they can. These papers probably tell them their names and who they are. They are becoming more aware of their specific identities.
Now I feel that the black keys want to contribute major chords. Please play F sharp, A sharp, C sharp.
I have the impression that the white keys are like the words, and the black keys are the meaning, science and soul. At times, the words of science are sad and the meaning of soul is joyful. Then at other times, it's just the other way around. But somehow, they are coordinated. Here, with you, it's not like it is in the place where there are two schools that give me so much trouble. Here I see that there is only one piano, with white keys and black keys. Words and meaning come together on this piano.
I have to confess that I can only play the piano. I understand nothing of your numbers, the language of the science school. But they say that numbers are like tones. I can understand what you told me about the censorship. The censors want to understand the world without meaning. They want to exclude the soul. But it's evident that one must play differently according to how warm it is and what is constellated by the master. According to how one plays, it will be more or less warm. For example, A while ago, it got quite hot when the master said, "Captain." Meaning emerges when it gets warm. How can you understand the world without including meaning? It's absurd.
The censors nowadays believe that chance rules the world. I mean the best of the censors.
But do they believe that chance is always the same? Doesn't it change when it gets warm?
Chance is always fluctuating, but sometimes it does so systematically. I guess this is what you mean. Sometimes chance fluctuates with meaning and purpose. With these words, a big change comes about. Through the window, I see people approaching the house. They line up near the window and call my name. At first, their faces are unfamiliar. I do not recognize any of them. I play an easy piece by Bach to keep everything orderly. I realize I have no choice. I have to give a lecture. I open the window. Now I am no longer in Vienna, but in Zurich, and it is 1953. I speak from the window and give what I call a lecture to strangers. It seems to me that attempts to extend the viewpoints of modern science will lead to a new type of natural law. I have in mind the meaningful coincidences brought to our attention by C.G. Jung, which cannot be reproduced intentionally and only occur in special circumstances. With these, the element of meaning is introduced into random chance events. Naturally, this affects developments in evolution. The mutations are not only random, but they show a pattern of meaningful coincidences. By naming these coincidences synchronistic, Jung acknowledges a peculiar relation between them and our notion of time. They take place in the world of time and space. To the extent that the phenomena of adaptation and biological evolution clearly demonstrate a direction in time, it seems quite natural to consider them as connected with meaning or purpose. In spite of the lively demands from the audience that I go on and speak further, I close the window. Now I am alone again with the lady.
That was very moving. I think we have just created something. Now it must be made legitimate. This new creation needs a name, an identity.
When one really wants to introduce something new like this to the world, one has to offer something concrete so people can experience and verify it for themselves directly. They need to put their hands on it and test its reality. All I can tell them at this point, unfortunately, is that chance sometimes changes in a systematic way. But I can't yet explain to them the psychic reality that you speak of when you use the words, "it's getting warm." I can't explain how one can study this phenomenon scientifically. Without that, this would look more like a magical procedure than the basis for scientific experiment. To begin with, I will have to explain to them in a way that they can understand in their school what is meant by the piano and piano playing. No doubt they will have a different understanding of this and hear different tones than we do. I have to work out a comprehensible language for them.
I have to confess that I am limited. I can only play the piano and teach it. I can neither teach piano theory, nor can I construct one. This is beyond my capacities.
Let's start like this. The human being is like this piano in front of us. The tones have pitch and intensity. The melodies are patterns that can be reproduced and recognized in different keys because one key can be transformed into another. This makes the language of emotion and meaning communicable. Second, just as there are low, medium, and high tones on the piano, you find in human beings the instinctive or impulsive, the intellectual or rational, and the spiritual or supernatural tonalities. We have these three levels of tonality. To continue, the volume of sound is the intensity with which these tones act upon consciousness. They can be low, medium, or loud, and they can vary from time to time. I know of a school that instead of melodies or tones speaks of typical primordial images, archetypes. These are the patterns as they manifest in the psyche. Moreover, instead of tonal pitches, it speaks of colors, which are emotions. And instead of soft or loud sounds, it speaks of light and heavy psychic masses, complexes. The common feature of all these images and melodies is number. Earlier you said you understand nothing of our numbers. Do you know of other numbers?
I'm not sure, but I guess so. For me, numbers and tones are really one and the same. If the pitch of a tone were one number and the volume of sound were another, then I could actually count them, and the melody would result in a pattern of numbers. But it's seldom that I can transpose my impressions exactly into numbers and communicate them to you.
And I cannot play the piano like you. As you can see, I can only play simple pieces, not complicated sonatas. And you don't know mathematics. If I had more of your skill and you more of mine, you would be able to communicate number patterns to me, and I would be able to do calculations with them. These archetypal patterns reach down into the world of animals and plants, perhaps even deeper. They might indicate precisely how warm it is, to use your words, the emergence of meaning. Feeling one's way into their varying configurations would show lines of emerging development. They would have to leave space for different possible lines of development and would in general only indicate a disposition or probability for what might result, not a certainty. This would not lead to a new type of determinism. One would always have to assume a certain amount of freedom for what could happen, in particular with respect to the choice of the key in which a melody is realized. And if we could develop the ability to perceive these configurations and to understand them, we would see more clearly how the fluctuations of chance come and go in nature in such a way that they allow meaning or purpose to become manifest. Then I'm sure the captain would speak the right word at the right moment, and so would the master, and the captain's daughter would be healed.
And the young woman you told me about would be free to live.
Yes, and then we would also know more about that country in the far north, which we can see only in outline now, and would also know more about its inhabitants. But today I have seen that home country from afar. Doesn't the home country belong inseparably to the master? And just like the master changes his form over time, from past to present to future, so there is a past and a present and a future home country, just like there is a past, a present, and a future face of woman. These images change over time. Now I'm sad because, like so many others, I see the home country from afar, but I will not enter it.
Yes, but that's okay. You forget something very important, namely the fourth, the timeless. It belongs to the home country and to the feminine. This creates unity among the three parts you were just talking about.
Your words stir me profoundly. Sadly, though, I have to get back to my world now, but I will return.
What do you want to do there?
I want to try with all the means available to me to bring about a state of reconciliation with the Master, so the two schools can be united.
That is what I have long been waiting for.
Then, when he is reconciled to our world, you will be free.
What do you mean? Are you alluding to what I said earlier about being one with the Master?
Exactly. You will have freedom to move about and make your own choices. Goodbye for now. To whatever extent I am able to confront the world in the future, I owe it all to you. I now feel it is time to leave.
Wait. Transformation of the center.
In earlier times, one would have announced, "Behold, lead is transformed into gold." At this moment, the lady slips a ring from her finger, which I had not noticed before, and lets it float in the air.
I suppose you know this ring from your school of mathematics. It is the ring I.
Yes, of course. The I creates a united pair of the void and the one, the imaginary and the real numbers.
It makes the instinctive, the intellectual, and the spiritual into something whole. Real numbers and imaginary numbers alone cannot represent this wholeness without the I.
The ring with the I is the unity beyond particle and wave, and at the same time, it is the operation that brings one of these two forms into the foreground.
It is the atom, the indivisible unit of wholeness.
It makes time stop, turns time into a static image.
It is the marriage of the imaginary and the real, and it is the realm of the middle that one can never reach alone, but only in a pair.
Gracious Lady, remain merciful.
Now I knew that I could leave the room and go back into normal time and everyday life. Now I am outside, and I notice I'm wearing my coat and hat. Suddenly, from afar, I hear a C major chord of 4 notes. Apparently, it is being played by the lady who is now alone again.